originally in Spanish. Last time, I described why during a conflict you cannot know what is going on, nor what the truth is, since both sides will impose their disinformation as part of their means and strategies with which to manipulate the perception not only of the public, but also of the enemy. It is an important part of how a war is won. So everything that is published during a conflict will be manipulated and exaggerated to the convenience of whoever is publishing it. This is war propaganda, and has been around basically as long as there have been wars. So even if you see everything and form your own criteria, you will not be able to have a clear picture or idea of what is really going on. But yes, there is one thing that you can know with complete certainty. And it is the most important thing to know during a conflict involving major world powers specifically. It is true that when there are regional wars involving small nations of little world political power or influence, these clan or quasi-clan wars can arise out of disagreements and power interests among their members. This triggers a local war, which the controllers will watch closely and then send their agents to manipulate and guide the outcome according to the interests of the deep cabal. These agents will be sent in before, during, or after the conflict as they see fit, and will be under the guise of being analysts, military advisors, UN observers to keep the peace, or more openly be secret agents who make deals with the leaders of such places, or in the last case, send in special forces units. In many occasions, the cabal will send agents to both sides, making believe that powerful nations under the name of their organizations like the United Nations or NATO, among others, are on their side, being that they are making agreements with both sides of the conflict, agreements that only end up benefiting the deep cabal. And the same will happen with an endless number of variants and methods that they apply, depending on what is necessary for each situation. This is nothing new, but I should mention it as context for the following. While, as I have stated above, small wars or wars between nations inconsequential to the controllers can have a real element in them, I should also mention that the deep cabal can also start a local war against a nation when they have realized that their leaders are not playing by the rules imposed by the cabal itself. Rules they impose using organizations such as the United Nations, up to those imposed through their secret Masonic and Illuminati lodge organizations, which in turn exploit the goodwill of their low-grade members, who for the most part have no idea what they themselves are doing or who they are really working for. In those cases, they will intervene with a local war to then impose a puppet under their control as the new president or leader, always using the imposition or excuse of being liberators and saviors of nations to implement democracy, for the benefit of the civilian population. Benefits they never see, as it is only manipulation and propaganda, as I expressed above. Moving on to a larger conflict. When a conflict of whatever nature develops between nations that are clearly under Illuminati deep cabal domination and controls, the wars are of a different nature altogether. And that nature is obvious to those who have eyes to see and minds to analyze. And this, from an outsider's point of view, is painfully obvious. Painfully obvious because the population of Earth should be able to take this into account and know this, not only for their own sake, but for their own survival. Because what I will say next is not a theory, nor is it a guess, nor is it a conclusion based on logic, but it is already considered a firm, constantly repeating and unquestionable fact. When the deep cabal controls both nations in conflict, or both groups of nations, everything is pre-planned. Everything obeys a previous agenda that they have in mind and in preparation, sometimes years ago, decades, and sometimes even hundreds and thousands of years ago. This is inconceivable to the average terrestrial population that lives from day to day, from fortnight to fortnight, and for whatever they can afford, and without being able to plan what they will do the following week, much less have a life plan. Also, having a finite temporal perception, the majority of the human population will not understand why or how a group can make plans for so many years, even generations into the future, because they think that the people in power will not see the benefits during their lifetimes. This is where the non-human elements that control the deep cabal come in, who have a longevity far greater than humans. So a conflict between large nations and under their control will have no element of real political, economic, or strategic interest as the civilian population is told. All discussions of geopolitics, economics, and dominance of transnational corporations over the monopoly of natural resources is just propaganda by the very controlling cabal to divert the attention of the human population. They control both sides to the supreme level. It is a psychopathic game they have been playing for thousands of years, and the real reasons I will give later in this same text, although they have been mentioned before, but I must fit that in here for the sake of clarity of all I'm trying to explain. They just make the population believe that two nations or more that are large have disagreements with each other that have resulted in the loss of diplomacy, resulting in war, as the only and last way to resolve a dispute. And the people, the human population, will believe it, because that is how they have them programmed, and that is how it is set within the framework of their understanding of their reality. Example: disputes between unruly and annoying neighbors in their neighborhood or colony where they live. the average human population will transfer that way of thinking about conflicts to the geopolitical realm. And that is how the deep cabal controllers want them to think. But the reality is very different. The controllers, with a view to energy, economic, and lush exploitation of the human population, mass control and population control, by way of population geoengineering, will impose a war between two or more nations that they completely control. And I mean completely. This is the case of countless wars in the past, but as more direct and recent examples, we have the First and Second World Wars, the Vietnam conflict, and above all, the Cold War. During the Cold War, the world population was led to believe that there were two great power blocs that wanted political and economic domination over the earth, with a constant latent threat of mutual annihilation with the use of nuclear weapons, which is known as MAD threat, which also stands for Mutual Assured Destruction. With this system of imposition of ideas mind control over the planetary human population, they would be kept in constant worry and constant suffering that kept them under control. Also, this extremely dualistic bilateral model provoked a good-bad, black-white mentality in the minds of the human population. And in terms of the economic realm, it would maintain the weapons industry, which is huge, as well as the economic competitive machinery in operation. With this system, they also make use of systems of imposed religions that also help to guide the human population in the manner of livestock. So during a war of this kind, as an example I will say World War II, the Illuminati deep cabal controlled, and still does, both sides, the Allies and the Axis, where the same bankers financed both sides, where Ford Motor Company, General Motors and Chrysler production plants, among others, manufactured engines and engine components to supply both sides. And meanwhile, they had the people in the factories, mostly women, working from sun up to sun down under the mind control and war propaganda of crisis effort to win the war, exploiting the courage and the life force of human beings. The outcome of military operations in that kind of conflicts is already planned and already agreed upon. And the leaders of both sides, who are the masks and puppets of the deep cabal, know it and only play a role imposed by their superiors. All controlled from below using the communication systems, the economy, and the rules and laws of the secret societies. The reasons for a war of this nature are completely prefabricated and are imposed by means of war propaganda in the mass media. The reason for these wars are the wars themselves, with a view to population control. Wars are real. Suffering is real. Deaths and struggles are real. The effort to beat the other side is real. But the battles are already decided, as are the wars. They are already planned. It is already known who must win and who must lose, and when and for what purpose. This stems not only from the strategic aspect of a war, strategic as major situational planning, but also from the purely tactical aspect, immediate in the fight. Because not only wars are already planned, and it is already known who wins and who loses, but also the same happens in the battles over regions or parts in and of the same war. They will pit an army defending a region against an offender with a view to invade. They already know who should win, and they know the stakes of which side has more strength, where then it is here where they begin to anticipate the outcome. But as the struggle and the human spirit is unpredictable, sometimes things do not turn out as the cabal wished. It is in these situations where, under the orders of the generals, who in turn will take orders from their Illuminati puppets and these from those of the cabal, an army that is in the lead and is winning an important battle but was not supposed to win, will be given an irrational and even foolish order to retreat under any excuse that will return the balance of power in the battle to the side that was already pre-planned to win that battle, thus returning the narrative and the correct pre-planned outcome to how it should be in the minds of the deep cabal controllers. These kinds of orders that turn the situation during a battle into what can be seen as counter to the very interests of the side that carries them out are later taken by analysts and military historians as simply mistakes of war, tactical and strategic errors, and are not analyzed further by not understanding what is really going on behind them. An example of this would be the advance of the German forces during the invasion against the Soviet Union, where they stalled trying to take the city of Stalingrad, where modern historians only think that Hitler's need to take that city was only because it bore the name of Stalin, leader of the Soviet Union at that time, for the moral blow that it would give him. In reality, this stalemate that lasted 5 months, 1 week and 3 days, August 23, 1942 to February 3, 1943, was only to decimate the German forces, reduce their advance capacity and strength, and turn the war in favor of the Soviet Union that they had already prepared as the one that should be the winner. And that is repeated later again in the upper part of Russia with the battle and siege of Leningrad, September 1941 to January 1944. And it should be the winner because Russia was and still is under complete control of the deep cabal, and they needed it as it was and extremely strong in every way, militarily, economically, and social ideologically, to execute the next phase of the controllers' plans, the Cold War. So, no matter the enormous effort of the soldiers on both sides, no matter the type and efficiency of the war machine, no matter who has the best tanks, no matter who has the best planes, No matter who the best pilot is, no matter how many die, how many get mutilated, how many families are destroyed, how many people are left with post-traumatic stress disorder, no matter the human spirit and their passion to defend their own, to defend their families, their home, their nation. Because everything is already planned in advance. Who wins and who loses, why, when, and how it fits into the events that follow. Wars are very real, as are the consequences for the general population, military or otherwise. But the reasons for these kinds of wars are not. This has been going on for thousands of years. It is nothing new. And added to this is the fact that later in history, something else is described that has nothing to do even with the propaganda used to motivate soldiers and the civilian population to justify a war. The real motivation, the reason for creating a war, will always be the same. Geoengineering of population, numbers control, and exploitation of the human spirit at all levels. Who is causing all this? Those who benefit from human suffering on all levels. Those who eat lush, which is nothing more than creative energy of manifesting realities, coming from beings with connection to the original source, real humans. These beings cannot exist on their own, because they are egregores of human creation, manifested directly as a result of the concentration of creative attention of human beings. Fear concentrates all attention on the object of that fear, blinding reason and vision all around. This is lush. It is not a substance per se, as adrenochrome would be, although it is, of course, related. Or it could only be seen to be interpreted as a substance when viewed from the etheric side point of view. The creative concentration of reality manifestation formed from fear is very strong, precisely because of its blinding concentration. Without this, such entities would disappear, for they cannot sustain their existence alone. They need human suffering to sustain themselves, because they are a product of the human mind, direct manifestation of all the fears that they have, focused in a single entity form. If you stop paying attention to it, they will dissolve. Where are they, and who exactly are they? They are not local. They are all over the world. They are energies that only manifest as something at certain times when conditions are propitious. And they will always be propitious only by the direct intervention of the creative attention of humans. When they come together to fear a single thing in a specific place, visible entities can emerge in the form of what they call demons, apparitions, or whatever they want to call them. And by pinpointing as much as possible where they are, this comes from just the point where the human becomes the non-human, that threshold of mutual interference, of difficult interaction. It is where the humans behind the secret societies merge with the dark entities egregores of humanity, which they, of the deep cabal, worship. So this problem is of a purely human nature or genesis, in that they are being victimized by their own creations for not being able to control their own mind. At the same time, keeping in mind that humanity as such, as a race seen as souls with the connection to Source, is not really just one race, but a whole soup of souls of extraterrestrial origin.